This episode is brought to you by the Wood Slicer Legendary Resaw Blade, available only at highlandwoodworking.com. Last time in part 4, we milled our drawer lumber, dovetailed for drawers, and we assembled the drawers with a little glue, and we embellished the drawers with some ebony plugs. So before we get started, I would just like to thank everybody that stayed with me up until what is now the 5th part of this desk build. I really didn't think it was going to take this long to build this thing, but here we are. And if you haven't watched the first 1 through 4 parts of this build, go back and watch those and then come back to this video. It'll make a little bit more sense. But in this video, I'm going to work on the drawer slides, which will be composed of sliding dovetails. And we're going to finish the top, and we'll start on the breadboard ends. So let's get started. I need to work on the drawer slides next, which will get half lapped into these rabbets and the drawer dividers that we created earlier. I'm going to make my drawer slide supports from some scrap maple that I had laying around. The first thing I'm going to do is rip them to width, and then I'll face joint them and plane them to thickness. I've got a piece of scrap cherry that's going to go in the back of the case behind the drawers. And this will get screwed to the back of the case and hold the drawer slide supports, which will come in this direction and get rabbeted into the drawer divider in the front and go into a mortise in the back. So that I can more easily mark the location of those mortises in that piece, I went ahead and temporarily clamped it to the front of the case. I'm going to remove most of the waste of these mortises using a Forstner bit, and then I'll clean it up with a chisel. I temporarily clamped this back piece that we just mortised into the back of the case. Now I need to take these drawer rail supports and I need to cut them to length. So I need to have them the length so that when they go into the back mortise, that they can drop into the front rabbet that we created. So I took a scrap piece of wood and I kept nibbling away at this until I got it to fit perfectly into the rabbet. Now I have my miter gauge set and we'll cut our pieces. By using my DIY tenon jig, I'll complete this rabbet. Now I can work on the tenons that go into the back. In the back of each drawer slide support that we just rabbeted, I need to make a mortise for a floating tenon. And to do that, I'm going to use my horizontal mortiser. With a Forstner bit, I'm going to countersink for some screws so I can attach this to the back of the case. I need to work on the components for the drawer slides next, and for that I'm going to use sliding dovetails. And I have a piece of scrap cherry that I'm going to use. I need to face joint one side and then we'll plane this to thickness. The piece that I'm making now will form the female portion of a sliding dovetail. Now I just need to cut them to width. Before I take these pieces over to the router table using a dovetail bit, I'm going to remove the bulk of the material using a stacked dado set at the table saw. At the router table, I'm going to make this dovetail channel. I'm going to make 2 passes, 1 per side. I'm going to make the male portion of the sliding dovetail next, and I have some stock that I'm going to use for that, and I've already milled it to thickness. Next, I need to make the angled cuts, and I've set my table saw blade to the correct angle, which matches the dovetail bit that I used to make the female portion. So I made a tiny goof when I made the hole placement for my drawer slide, but it's nothing critical. Relax. I'm planning on attaching the female portion of the drawer slide to the front of the drawer using dowels, but I put the hole for the dowel right smack in the center thinking that I would have a corresponding place to put the other hole on the drawer slide, but I do not. So I'm going to put the holes on either side, and I'll have 2 dowels per drawer slide. I was originally going to have the plywood bottom go into a groove into the back rail. So this plywood is a little too short. So I made a little shim out of some scrap plywood that'll just sit on top of the back rail. I have the drawer positioned exactly where I want it. Now the tricky part is getting this male portion of the sliding dovetail secured to the drawer slide supports without moving it out of alignment. So now I'll just move the drawer out little by little, throwing a nail in along the way. I'm going to start working on the top of the desk next, and I have some stock that I've cut to rough length. Next thing I'm going to do is straighten one edge at the joiner, and I'll cut it to rough width. Before I can plane these top boards to thickness, I need to face joint one side, and we'll do that next at the joiner. As usual, I overextend my joiner by about 1/2 inch, so I need to take off as much as I can at the joiner, and I'll remove that last little bit with a hand plane. I edge jointed all my mating surfaces at the joiner. Now it's time to glue this top up. With the top clamped on my bench and a straight edge clamp, I'm going to cut both ends to size with a circular saw. And because I'm likely to get a ragged edge with the circular saw, I'm going to clean it up afterwards with a router. For this, I'm going to use a pattern bit with the bearing below the surface of the plunge router. I'm going to work on the breadboard ends next. Not actually bread. We're not going to make any bread, but these will go on either end of the top to help keep the top flat. And for that, I bought some 5/4 lumber because the breadboard ends need to be a little bit thicker than the actual top. I cut my breadboard ends about 1/8 inch longer on each end of the top. So that's it for part 5, guys. So next time, in the last part of this series, we'll go ahead and finish the breadboard ends, and we'll throw in some ebony plugs and some ebony splines, and we'll make some drawer pulls, and we'll finally put a finish on this piece. And if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing to my channel, and you can also buy some cool GarageWoodworks gear by going to my GarageWoodworks store. And you can also follow me on Facebook, and I'm also on Twitter. And I think that's it. Thanks for watching, guys.